I think I'm going to start with uploading on Fridays. If I remember right, that's when I posted part 1 of this, and it works for me. So this is part 2 in my writing advice series, and it's about how to write female characters. But first, let me introduce you to my favorite word, average. The average women's pant size in the US is a 12, not a 6, and not a 000, and there's nothing wrong with that. As with vanity sizing being the unfortunate phenomenon that it is, a pant size by itself doesn't tell you anything about a person. I can hear you asking, but Dormy, if this is a writing guide for women, then why are you focusing on clothing sizes? Vanity sizing. Don't use a dress size to describe how short or tall, skinny or fat your character is because it's inaccurate. It all goes back to the word average. It really is a beautiful word. Here's an example of how you can use it. Hannah was average for her height and age. She had brown eyes and curly brown hair tied in a bun at the nape of her neck. A book bag was over her shoulder, and Hannah's skin was a dark fawn color. She was dressed in her school's uniform, and her attention was on her iPhone as she lazily scrolled through TikTok whilst waiting for the next bell. You can see Hannah in your mind, can't you? Maybe she doesn't look exactly like how I see her in mine, but all the important parts are there. It's easy for people to relate to someone who looks like them. Something else I want you to keep in mind is not to put too much emphasis on a woman's breasts, or lack thereof, as there are plenty of fully grown women who really don't have them. I'm also talking about all women, not just those assigned female at birth. You don't just turn 21 and get handed a pair of 36Cs. Now, here's a different writing example for you. Rose was sitting at a booth in the cafe. She could hear the machines behind the counters and smell the coffee beans as the baristas filled another order. Rose hit send on the email asking if there's anything she needed to change on the business logo for her client. She went up to the counter, asking for another dark chocolate mocha, all while keeping an eye on her MacBook Pro. As Rose went back to her booth to wait for her drink, she rubbed her shoulder, discreetly adjusting her bra strap. She knew she needed to buy a new one, as hers were leaving red marks on her shoulder and her back had been hurting more lately. Rose is a graphic designer. She's working in a Starbucks right now. She has a MacBook Pro, also rather busty as inferred by the red marks on her shoulders from her bra straps and back pain. But what about what Rose looks like? Not important. Don't judge a woman's worth based on her appearance. Sometimes it's okay to leave a character blank. There's really nothing more to say about that. I didn't want to describe Rose's looks and the paragraph didn't really have room anyway. Which brings me to the Jane test. From my understanding, the Jane test is where you take multiple female characters, change all their names to Jane, and based off of the introduction of these characters, can you tell anything about them as people other than their physical appearance? Now, let's apply this to Hannah and Rose. Jane was average for her height and age. She had dark fawn-colored skin, brown eyes, and curly brown hair, and was at her school waiting on the next bell as she browsed TikTok. Jane had her MacBook Pro out at a Starbucks and was emailing a client about the logo she designed for his company. After sending the email, she went up to the counter and ordered a second drink. But I can tell these are two different women who happen to share the same name. We're at the closing part of the video now. I'm going to put some more resources in the video description box to help you with your writing, but I just want to say there should be more girls that instead of being the first to do something are just normal. Because honestly, being the first female vice president says more about the United States of America than it does Kamala Harris. I'll be back with part 3.